network of organs, cells, and tissues that all work together to help protect you against disease. When a disease-causing germ, for example, a virus or bacteria enters your body.
Immune system recognize the germ as being foreign or not belonging in the body, responds by making special protein called antibodies that help destroy the germ and remember the germ that made you sick and how to destroy it. This protection is called immunity.
So, good morning, ma'am, and today I will discuss the immunity, which is have two parts, which is the innate defense system and the adaptive defense system. We all know that our immunity or immune system is one of the most important for us as a human because if our immunity is weak, we are also weak. So, in everything we do, we are coming into contact with countless pathogens. And these are the bacteria and viruses that could potentially do great harm to our microscopic being by interfering with our cellular activity. So how do we stand their microscopic threats? And fortunately, every human possesses an immune system that's as well equipped to protect us. So let's talk how it works. The immune system can be split up into two parts, the innate defense system and the adaptive defense system. So, the innate is the part that is always ready to go. It begins with the external membrane, like the skin and variety of mucus. So, this separates what's inside from what's outside, but if, of course, there are lots of ways for pathogens to get past this barrier. So, that's why we have internal defenses like the antimicrobial proteins, phagocytes, and other entitles that are able to inhibit the spread of the invaders throughout the body. Then there is the adaptive defense system. This is much more sophisticated as it involves a response that is specific to the two of that types of invader made by possible things called antibodies. These two systems communicate and work together to keep us healthy and safety every day. Let's talk about the innate defense system. Starting with the surface barrier, the skin and mucosa surface barrier block pathogens. And these are very effective at blocking pathogens from entering the body. So, the epithelial cells on the surface are highly keratinized, so as long as it is unbroken, it's tough to get through. That's why we can easily get infections when we have cuts on the skin because pathogens can suddenly get in that way. So wherever we have natural opening and body cavities, they're lined with mucosa that have important features. They tend to be acidic, which inhibit bacterial growth, and many of them have lysosomes which destroy bacteria. If mucous lines are a particular passageway, microorganisms tend to get stuck there. We can even find defensive, which are the antimicrobial peptides that where the internal innate defenses come into play. So the hallmark of this system is the inflammatory response. Before we go through that, let's discuss first the phagocytes, which we can perform phagocytosis. This is the cell engulfs some pathogens or other debris and it sits inside in a vesicle. This vesicle which merge with lysosomes which had acid hydrolyzed enzymes that can digest whatever are leaving it in tiny pieces. These pieces then leave the cells by exocytosis. Unable to do any harm, the biggest and best phagocytoses are macrophages, which are derived from white blood cells. There are also natural killer cells, which circulate in blood and lymph that can kill cancer cells and viruses infected cells. Early on, simply by detecting certain abnormalities in the cell and inducing apoptosis in the cell, which is programmed cell's death. And phagocytosis are also part of the inflammatory response, and this occurs when the body tissue are injured in some way by physical trauma, heat, or infectious chemicals like histamine into the cellular fluid. So this begins with the release of inflammatory chemicals like histamine into the extracellular fluid. In addition, macrophages as well as cells of certain boundary tissue have receptors that enable them to recognize the pathogen sometimes with specific, and this kind of event will trigger a release of cytokines, which are another type of inflammatory chemicals. What these chemicals do is they cause local arteries to dilate and nerve capillaries to leak slightly, otherwise known as vasodilator and vascular permeability. So the excess of blood in the area causes the redness and swelling that we can visibly see when a part of the body is inflamed. Although this generate pain because of the pressure on nerve ending, it is a favorable strategy because the rush of fluid sweeps and any foreign materials into lymphatic vessels so that it can be broken down in the lymph nodes, and the fluid also delivers proteins that are important of floating to aid in repair. Once the inflammation has initiated phagocytosis, then rush the scene first neutrophils and then macrophages soon after. This begins with phagocytes enter the bloodstream from the red bone marrow so they can get to the injury. Then in margination they cling to capillary walls of the sites of injury, recognizing molecular signals on inflamed cells in diapedes. Diapedes take squeeze out of the capillary chemotaxis. Will then occur where phagocytes migrate up the gradient of certain molecules that act as a homing device for the site of injury, ready to eat up any intruders. So that covers the basic regarding the innate defenses. So what about the adaptive defenses? So this is the part of the immune system that can learn about any foreign substance it comes into contact with, which we call intruders. So that covers the basic regarding the innate defenses. So what about the adaptive defenses? So this is the part of the immune system that can learn about any foreign substance it comes into contact with, which we call antigens, and develop the ability to protect the body from the specific antigen anytime in the future. But how can your immune system have such an incredible memory, and what does even mean by lymphocytes? And they circulate in the blood and lymph looking for the pathogens, which they are able to mark such that phagocytes can recognize them for destruction. So what are these antigens? The word antigen is derived from the phrase antibody, generating, so the words refers to any foreign substance that will be recognized being not of the self and will thus provoke an adaptive immune response. And this can be protein, polysaccharides, lipids, any large molecule that doesn't belong as well. As many pathogens as this world, therefore, and surface proteins that can also be recognized the part of the foreign substance. The interact with the immune system is called the antigenic determinants. An antibody or lymphocytes will bind in a way that resembles enzyme substrate interaction, and different lymphocytes will recognize different determinants. These include B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes, depending on what type of immunity they oversee, and there are also antigen presenting cells, lymphocytes of other variety originated inside red bone marrow. From and that apoptotic stem cells, they then become immunocompetent, meaning big game the ability to recognize a particular antigens, and once committed to a particular antigens. Thousands of surface receptors are produced that are devoted to that recognition on B cells. So these receptors are actually membrane-bound antibodies. These lymphocytes must recognize certain proteins but also learn self-tolerance. So the meaning is they must not attack the body itself. Cells that fail to do this are forced to undergo apoptosis, and in fact, Only about 2% of T cells will make it, but once that they do, will rapidly divided into too many copies of itself and all the organization antibodies. Only about 2% of T cells will make it, but once that do, will rapidly divided into too many copies of itself, all in the same antigens recognition. So now let's talk about the two types of adaptive immune response. There is the humoral immune response and the cellular immune response. The humoral immune response occurs when a new B cells encounter its antigens, which cause endocytosis followed by proliferation and differentiation into plasma cells. This will then mass produce the antibody that recognize the antigen, and this will circulate in the body and lymph, looking for the same things again. This is referred to as the primary immune response, and it takes a few days to make all these antibodies. So, which is the one drawback to this defense strategy, since it protects against future invasion, but it can't act so quickly upon the initial invasions. So, however, if that antigen does come back, the secondary immune response begins, and this will be the swift and effective with plenty of antibodies to tag the antigen for destruction. This kind of humoral immunity can be attained naturally through infections or artificially with vaccines, which allow for the primary immune response to occur with the inactive form of a pathogen, so that in the real things ever comes by the immune system is already for it. So, more on the vaccines at another time. In either case we are describing active humoral immunity. Passive humoral immunity is different because the body doesn't go through the work of recognizing and antigen and generating antibody. Instead, these antibodies can be introduced to be indirectly into the body, either through mother's milk or through injections of gamma globin on an antibody. For a closer look, as we said, these are the large proteins, and they consist of 4 polypeptide chains connected by disulfide bridge. The two halves of the Y shapes are identical. There are 2 heavy chains and 2 light chains, and a hinge region where the link occur chain has a C region, which is also almost the same in a V region. So now let's continue on in switch over the cellular immune response, where we will look at the T cells. Plays operate a bit differently as active T cells have the ability to kill cells of the body that have been infected by viruses or bacteria, as well as cancer cells. Diseases today. These cells today coming to major types of CD4 and CD8, which refer to glycoproteins that act as surface receptors and building differ from antigen receptors. Rather, they interact with other cells. So, CD4 cells activate B cells, T cells, and macrophages, while CD8 cells destroy the foreign cells or body cells, which foreign agents, activations, and differentiations. So, when T cells antigen receptors interact with antigens presenting cells, stimulation must occur from other molecules on the surface of the antigens presenting cells. This leads to proliferation and differentiation. The resulting T cells can be of a wide variety, and we will examine these types of at a later time. For now, we are done discussing the immunity, 2 parts of immunity, which is the innate defense system and the adaptive defense system, and the 2 parts of adaptive defense system, which is the humoral response and the cellular response.
Method in producing safe and effective vaccine. Attenuated live viruses, weakened forms of a live virus. They do not cause illness but will create an immune response. Examples include the MMR, measles, mumps and rubella, and chickenpox vaccine. Inactivated viruses, a version of the virus that has been killed. Although the virus is dead, antibodies will still be produced. Example includes the polio vaccine. Recombinant viruses are made in a lab through genetic engineering. This way, a specific gene can be reproduced. The HPV has several strains. The HPV vaccine can be tailored to protect against the strain that causes cervical cancer. Toxoid, inactivated version of bacterial toxins are used to make the immunity. Examples include the tetanus and diphtheria vaccines.
The active immunity is result when exposure to a disease organism trigger the immune system to produce antibodies to that disease. Active immunity can be acquired through natural immunity or vaccine-induced immunity. Natural immunity is acquired from exposure to the disease organism through infection with the actual disease. Vaccine-induced immunity is acquired through the introduction of a killed or weakened form of the disease organism through vaccination. Either way, if an immune person comes into contact with that disease, in the future, their immune system will recognize it and immediately produce the antibodies needed to fight it. Active immunity is long-lasting and sometimes lifelong. So the passive immunity is provided when a person is given antibodies to a disease rather than producing them through his or her own immune system. A newborn baby acquires passive immunity from its mother through the placenta. People can also get passive immunity through antibody-containing blood products such as immune globulin, which may be given when immediate protection from a specific disease is needed. The major advantage to passive immunity is that protection is immediate, whereas active immunity takes time, usually several weeks, to develop. However, passive immunity lasts only for a few weeks or months. Only active immunity is long-lasting. Mechanism of active and passive immunity. A prominent difference between active and passive immunity is that active immunity is developed due to the production of antibodies in one's own body, while passive immunity is developed by antibodies that are produced outside and then introduced into the body. Mechanism of active and passive immunity. A prominent difference between active and passive immunity is that active immunity is developed due to the production of antibodies in one's own body, while passive immunity is developed by antibodies that are produced outside and then introduced into the body.
All COVID-19 vaccines being developed aim to produce immunity to the SARS-CoV-2 virus by stimulating an immune response to an antigen, usually the characteristic spike protein found on the surface of the virus. Some traditional vaccines achieve this by modifying the virus to weaken or disable it, so that when introduced to the body, an immune response can be generated to the antigen, without the virus causing disease. When the immune system comes into contact with the weakened virus, its defences, such as antibodies and T cells, attack the virus or infected cells. In the process, specialised memory cells take note of the specific antigen and prime the immune system to produce cells and antibodies that will quickly target these proteins. So the next time that person is exposed to the same virus, the immune system is ready to fight it off. Instead of using the whole virus, another way to trigger immunity involves using just fragments of it, like the spike proteins. These subunit vaccines have the advantage of being relatively easy and cheap to produce, and are incapable of causing disease because these fragments are not able to infect host cells. However, they are less likely to be recognised by immune cells aimed at attacking infected cells, which means they may trigger a weaker immune response. Because of this, subunit vaccines often include chemical agents called adjuvants, which are designed to stimulate a stronger immune response, and booster shots may also be required. Not all vaccines are designed to introduce antigens to the body. Some work by using cells in a patient's body to produce the antigens themselves. Examples include viral vector vaccines and mRNA vaccines. In both cases, the goal is to get a short fragment of genetic code taken from the target pathogen, in this case the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19, into the patient's cells. By hijacking the cellular mechanisms, these kinds of vaccines mimic the way viruses normally reproduce during natural infection, but rather than creating copies of the virus, the cells only produce large amounts of antigen that then usually trigger a strong immune response. Viral vector vaccines achieve this by inserting the genetic code for the antigen into a harmless virus, which effectively acts like a delivery system to get the code into the cells without causing disease. Vector-based vaccines can be complex to develop, but they can trigger strong immune responses without the need for adjuvants. And in theory, one type of vector can be used to deliver code for a range of different antigens, which can speed up vaccine development. Nucleic acid vaccines, like mRNA and DNA vaccines, also involve inserting genetic code into cells to produce antigens. But instead of using viruses to deliver the code, these vaccines take a more direct approach that involves inserting the code directly into cells, either by attaching it to a molecule or by forcing it into cells using a gene gun. These vaccines can be quick and cheap to develop, but they are a relatively new technology. With hundreds of COVID-19 vaccines now in development, it's likely that a mixture of different approaches will be needed in order to stop the global spread of this coronavirus and end the pandemic.
Hi, my name is David Arbenus and I'll be reporting about the National Immunization Program vaccines. For pregnant women, tetanus, diphtheria, or TD vaccine is offered. For newborn within 24 hours after birth, Bacille, Calmette Guerin or BCG, and Hep B vaccine are offered. For an infant under 1 year old, oral polio vaccine, inactivated polio vaccine, DPT, HIV, monococcal conjugate vaccine, measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines are offered. For a child, measles-containing vaccine or MCV, and tetanus, diphtheria, or TT vaccines are offered. For an adolescent, human papilloma virus vaccine or HPV, measles-containing vaccine or HCV, and tetanus, diphtheria are offered. For an older person, flu vaccine and pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine are offered.
Immunosuppression. People who are having a weakened immune system have a reduced ability to fight infections and other diseases. That's why you need to have immunosuppressant drugs. The immunosuppressant drugs are drugs that keep your immune system in check. It may recommend if you have autoimmune system disease, organ transplant, stem cell transplant, and bone marrow transplant. Now I will discuss the autoimmune diseases, the organ transplant, stem cell, and bone marrow transplant that are connected to immunosuppressant drugs. So first is the autoimmune diseases. Your immune system is made up of organs and cells meant to protect your body from bacteria, parasites, and cancer cells, viruses. And autoimmune diseases is the result of the immune system accidentally attacking your body instead of protecting it. It's unclear why your immune system does this. So, immunosuppressants hold back the immune system, helping to prevent cell damage inflammation. These drugs minimize symptoms. They can even put autoimmune diseases into remission. You have no signs of diseases like lupus, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and etc. And for people who get an organ transplant, immunosuppressants prevent the organ rejection. Your immune system knows the new organ isn't part of your original body, and it perceives that the new organ as a threat, and they will try to destroy it. The medication doses may decrease over time as your immune system adjusts to the new organ. Healthcare providers commonly prescribe the prednisone as for organ transplantation. And lastly, the stem cell transplants can treat many conditions, including blood cancers like leukemia, blood disorders like sickle cell diseases, bone marrow problems like anaplastic anemia. So the immunosuppressants lower the chances of GVHD, which is the graft versus host disease. You receive different intravenous, the IV, or the oral immunosuppressants for several weeks to months during and after the stem cell transplant. We need to take the immunosuppressant for years until the new immune system settles down. So, in addition, immunosuppressant stops your immune system for damaging healthy cells and tissue. People with organ transplant and stem cell transplant take these medications to prevent the transplant rejection. They also treat the autoimmune diseases symptoms like what I said earlier. So the immunosuppressant drugs are powerful drugs that are required carefully monitoring to avoid problems.
Fingolimod is in a class of medications called sphingosine 1-phosphate receptor modulators. It works by decreasing the action of immune cells that may cause nerve damage. Fingolimod is used to prevent episodes of symptoms and slow the worsening of disability in adults and children 10 years of age and older with relapsing rheumatic forms of multiple sclerosis. As for the side effects, cough, headache, back pain, or diarrhea may occur. Gluteramine is in a class of medications called immunomodulators. It works by stopping the body from damaging its own nerve cells or the myelin. So gluteramine injection is used to treat adults with various forms of multiple sclerosis, including clinically isolated syndrome or CIS, a nerve symptom episodes that last at least 24 hours, and relapsing rheumatic forms, a course of disease where symptoms flare up from time to time, or a secondary progressive forms where a course of disease relapses occur more often. Gluteramine may cause several side effects, which are pain, redness, swelling, itching or lump at the injection site, weakness, depression, abnormal dreams, pain in the back, leg, or other parts of the body, severe headache, loss of appetite, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, weight gain, swelling of the hands, feet, ankles, or lower legs, purple patches on skin, joint pain, confusion, nervousness, and crossed eyes. Sample drugs or brand names, Copaxone and Glatopa. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or NSAIDs are medicines that are widely used to relieve pain, reduce inflammation, and bring down a immunosuppressant activity of NSAID correlates with their ability to block transcription factors required for the expression of incredible response genes triggered by the T-cell antigen receptor or TCR engagement. They are often used to relieve symptoms of headaches, painful periods, sprains and strains, colds and flu, coronavirus or the COVID-19, conditions such as arthritis,